The rooftop celebration was supposed to be a cherished memory, a baby shower surrounded by friends and laughter. But that moment shattered in an instant when a thick, frosted cake slammed directly into Alara's face. The room went dead silent, gasps frozen midair as creamy icing slid down her cheeks. She stood motionless, the shock locking her in place while her heart raced. Across the room, her husband, Nathan, was bent over laughing, tears streaming from his eyes, his cruel amusement echoing off the walls. Talk about perfect timing, he managed between breaths, grinning like it was some big joke. The once beautiful cake, a symbol of celebration, lay in a crumpled mess across Alara's satin maternity gown. Its sugary scent mixed with the humiliation that soaked into her skin. Her eyes welled with shame, but her legs refused to move. Around her, the guests shifted uncomfortably, some casting sympathetic looks, others whispering behind hands, and a few clearly entertained. But none of it stung more than Nathan's laugh, the same man who'd once promised to protect her, now toasting with the woman beside him like she never mattered. To fresh starts, Nathan announced, raising his glass high. His arm was wrapped around a woman far too familiar, Camille, her former best friend and maid of honor. And to the past, he added with a smirk, may it stay buried where it belongs. Camille lifted her glass in unison, her eyes glittering with smug satisfaction. Alara's world tilted. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a setup. A cruel spectacle, carefully orchestrated for maximum humiliation. How long had they been plotting this together? The whispers, the cake, the mocking toast. It wasn't spontaneous. It was war. And Camille, the realization hit harder than the cake. This was the same woman who once held her bouquet, the same woman who had zipped up her wedding dress and sworn loyalty with a smile. Now, she stood shoulder to shoulder with Nathan, flaunting a smugness that sliced through Alara like glass. Camille had played her part flawlessly, appearing supportive while quietly sinking the knife in. Alara's chest tightened. Her hands trembled at her sides as she tried to breathe. She had given everything up for Nathan. A life of wealth, her father's legacy, her place in one of the most powerful families in New York, all tossed aside because he had convinced her that love was enough. He told her they'd build something together, something real. But now, looking at him with his arm around Camille, she saw how blind she had been. Once, Alara had ruled every room she walked into, elegant, admired, untouchable. Now she stood covered in frosting, a tragic punchline with mascara streaking her cheeks. She could already see the headlines forming in the tabloids. Frosted heiress humiliated. Socialite wrecked at her own baby shower. The people who once adored her were now filming her disgrace, their phones raised like they were capturing a performance. Then came the final blow. Camille leaned toward Nathan and, loud enough for Alara to hear, said with a venomous smirk, she probably won't survive the delivery anyway. Nathan didn't flinch. He didn't even look at Alara. The words hung in the air, heavy and cruel. To them, her pregnancy wasn't sacred. It was disposable. Her hands curled into fists. She felt her stomach tighten, but not from rage, from pain. A sudden, sharp jolt shot through her. Alara's water broke right there on the rooftop, soaking her dress, as people looked on in frozen horror. But she didn't care. All she could see was them. The two people who had taken everything from her, laughing like she didn't even exist. Pain surged again, stronger this time. A contraction ripped through her body, but she used it to steel herself. She wouldn't crumble. Not now. Not here. Not in front of them. She gritted her teeth and took a step toward them, her body shaking, her mind on fire. They might have taken her pride, her peace, and almost her baby, but they wouldn't take her strength. Before we continue the story, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really helps us keep making stories like this. She woke up in a stark, white hospital room. The harsh fluorescent light above her made her eyes sting, and the smell of antiseptic filled her nose. Disoriented, she blinked slowly, trying to remember where she was. A dull ache pulsed through her abdomen. She reached for her belly with trembling fingers, her heart pounding as she felt the emptiness. The baby. Where was her baby? Panic gripped her chest. She tried to sit up, but the 4 lines tugged painfully against her skin. Her voice caught in her throat. No Nathan. No Camille. No family. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels like abandonment. Where is everyone? She whispered into the room, her voice raw and barely audible. A single monitor beeped in response. She looked around, hoping to see a nurse, a doctor, someone. But she was alone. The emptiness in her stomach deepened, mirrored by the void in her chest. She had never felt more discarded. Her child, her partner, her entire world, all ripped away. Betrayed, mocked, and now forgotten in a sterile white box. Tears welled in her eyes. Not just from the physical pain, but from the realization that she had been thrown away like the cake still staining her memory. Nathan hadn't come to see her. Camille was likely already planning the next photo op. Alara had been erased. But something shifted inside her. Lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to machines and stripped of everything, Alara made a silent vow. She would not stay broken. She would not let them win. They thought she'd disappear quietly. They were wrong. The sterile beep of the monitor continued its slow rhythm, echoing the heartbeat of a woman on the edge. Alara's fingers curled weakly against the hospital sheets, her body aching but her mind sharpening. She wasn't going to let this be the end of her story, not after everything they'd stolen from her. Nathan and Camille thought they had won, but they'd only awakened a fire inside her that they weren't ready for. A knock at the door startled her. A nurse stepped in, avoiding eye contact as she silently handed Alara her phone. Her fingers shook as she unlocked the screen, and then her heart dropped. The first thing that appeared was a video. Someone had recorded the baby shower. There she was, frozen on the screen, her face smeared with cake, her dress soaked, her body trembling while Nathan and Camille laughed like villains in a twisted rom-com. The video was everywhere. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Memes. Headlines. It was viral now, not just a private humiliation, but an international spectacle. The world wasn't laughing with her. They were laughing at her. Her throat tightened as she scrolled through the flood of cruelty. Cake-faced diva. Guess the money couldn't buy dignity. Should have kept the receipt on that marriage. Every comment sliced deeper than the last. Alara closed her eyes, the weight of it all suffocating. It wasn't just betrayal. It was public execution. And yet, the pain turned to fuel. If they wanted a spectacle, she'd give them one, but on her terms. The next few days were a blur of recovery and silent strategy. She refused to cry in front of anyone. Not the nurses, not the techs, not even the mirror. When she was finally strong enough to stand, she walked slowly but purposefully. Each step was a reminder. She was still here. She hired an investigator the moment she left the hospital. Not just any private eye, one of the best in the city, a former federal analyst with a reputation for digging deeper than anyone else dared. "I want everything," she told him. "Every secret. Every lie. I want to know how long this has been happening and why." And what he uncovered chilled her to the bone. Camille's betrayal wasn't some impulsive fling. It had been years in the making. She'd embedded herself into the lives of powerful couples, seduced husbands, and dismantled marriages for personal gain. Alara wasn't the first, just the highest profile. Camille had made a career of destruction, masking it as charm. But what shattered Alara most was the pattern, the manipulation, the secrets, the strategy. Camille had wormed her way in not just as a friend, but as a confidant. She had been there during every vulnerable moment, collecting information and using it against her. The nursery plans. The stress over Nathan's cold behavior. Every confession had been a weapon waiting to be used. Nathan wasn't innocent either. The investigator uncovered financial trails, hidden accounts, and contracts. Her husband had been funneling money from Alara's inherited family tech company for years, slowly, methodically. Every dollar he earned had a dirty trail back to her father's empire. Her entire life's foundation had been quietly stolen by the man she once thought was her soulmate. Worse, She found a clause in a prenuptial agreement, one she had signed without reading closely, trusting Nathan. It included a provision. If she ever filed for divorce on grounds of betrayal, and if she could prove it, she could seize all of Nathan's assets, including stock, properties, and control of the family firm. It was the key to destroying him. Alara pored over every document, every contract, every message. She barely slept. Her nights were filled with legal prep, and her days with careful plotting. She couldn't afford a single misstep. Nathan had power and connections, but Alara had truth and the proof. And then came the hospital records. They revealed the final, unthinkable truth. Nathan had bribed hospital staff to underplay the risks in her pregnancy. He hadn't just stood by while she collapsed. He had actively endangered her life and their babies. Surveillance footage showed him handing off a white envelope to a doctor in a dark hallway. The same doctor who had later told Alara everything was fine just hours before her emergency admission. Her stomach turned as she rewatched the footage again and again. It wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. He had gambled with her life, with their child's life. For what? To push her over the edge? To make her seem unstable? To take full custody later? That's when the rage turned into resolve. She wouldn't wait for justice. She would deliver it herself. Alara began leaking the evidence, slowly, strategically. She used anonymous tips to send documents to investigative reporters and high-profile media outlets. Emails, medical footage, forged business contracts, everything. Within days, the story broke. Headlines exploded. CEO caught in medical scandal. Heiress exposes empire built on lies. Betrayed wife strikes back. News anchors debated the scandal on primetime, and the internet turned its attention toward Nathan, not with praise, but with outrage. His image crumbled. And Camille? She vanished from the public eye, her carefully curated social accounts wiped clean. The media turned on her too, labeling her a conwoman, a manipulator, a social predator. Alara sat in her apartment, baby in her arms, as her phone buzzed nonstop. Articles, interviews, legal inquiries, public apologies, none of it fazed her. She watched the empire they built on her back collapse brick by brick. But Nathan wasn't done. He fought back, hard. A defamation suit, emergency motions, and custody threats came crashing in. He tried to paint Alara as unstable, vindictive, unfit. His lawyers were ruthless, dragging her through depositions and hearings. Still, she held firm. The courtroom smelled of cold leather and tension. Alara sat tall in the plaintiff's seat, her baby nestled safely with a nanny in the back room, protected from the spectacle that was now her life. Her hands trembled slightly beneath the table, but her face gave nothing away. She had to be stronger than ever now. Nathan entered flanked by his attorneys, suited, smug, confident. Camille didn't show. Not today. Maybe the public backlash had finally caught up to her. Or maybe she knew the house of cards they built together was collapsing in slow motion, and she didn't want to be there when it hit the ground. Alara's legal team didn't waste time. They came armed with everything: the prenup clause, the video footage, the hidden financial records, the bank transfers from Nathan's shell companies to corrupt hospital officials. The courtroom watched as the story unfolded, not as tabloid gossip, but as hard evidence backed by fact and law. She nearly lost her baby because of him, her attorney said, voice unwavering. Not from natural causes, but from deliberate, orchestrated negligence. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Nathan's lawyers tried to spin the story, painting Alara as dramatic, unstable, seeking attention. But it didn't stick. Not this time. The proof was too clear. The betrayal too vile. And then came the civil suit. Alara had filed for full custody, seeking to sever all ties between Nathan and their child. He endangered my pregnancy. He manipulated me, isolated me, and stole from my family. He is not fit to be a father, she said clearly, her voice firm. The judge nodded, taking notes, listening. As if things couldn't get more complicated, a twist surfaced from the past, Alara's mother's will. Long hidden, recently uncovered, and shockingly altered. A clause had been added years before. If Alara did not separate from Nathan within a strict time frame, she would be disinherited. She had 72 hours to finalize her divorce, or lose the legacy her mother had left behind. Her heart stopped.
Who had made that change? Why?
It didn't take long for her investigators to trace the forgery back to Camille. She had inserted the clause years earlier while working as a legal assistant on Alara's family estate. It had been part of the long game. The manipulation hadn't just been emotional, it was financial, strategic, and premeditated. Camille had engineered every piece of this fall. Alara knew she had no time to waste. She rushed to her old family estate to retrieve the original will, documents she hoped would prove the clause had been added later. But when she arrived, she froze in the grand hallway. Camille was already there. She stood in the study, going through drawers with an eerie calm, as if she owned the place. She looked up, not surprised. "You really thought you'd win," she said coolly. "You're still just a spoiled little girl playing dress-up in a woman's war." Alara didn't answer. Her eyes scanned the room, looking for the envelope that might contain the original copy. She took a step forward, but Camille blocked her path. "You don't get to rewrite the past," Camille hissed. "You should have stayed quiet." Then Camille did something Alara would never forget. With a flick of her wrist, she struck a match. She held it over a bundle of papers. Alara lunged, but it was too late. The flame dropped. The documents ignited instantly.
No.
Alara screamed, watching her last hope turn to ash. The fire caught fast, years of old, dry paper fueling it. Camille stepped back, her face lit by the orange glow. "This is what power looks like," she whispered before slipping out through the side door. Alara stood frozen, choking on smoke and disbelief. Her legs moved on instinct, grabbing the fire extinguisher mounted by the door. She tried to salvage what she could, but it was useless. Everything was gone. Back in her apartment later that night, she sat in the dim light, her child asleep in the crib beside her. She was devastated, yes, but not defeated. She still had something left, a loophole in the prenup that Nathan had overlooked. A line buried deep within the document, protected by a clause written in her favor. If betrayal could be proven through malice or criminal act, the entirety of Nathan's estate would revert to her ownership, including his company. He'd tried to strip her of everything, but in his arrogance, he had failed to notice the very clause that could destroy him. Alara read it over and over. It was airtight. Her lawyer confirmed it. She had one shot to use it, one final strike. And she knew just the stage to do it. Nathan was scheduled to headline a major tech summit in Los Angeles, his company's biggest public appearance since the scandal. The board, desperate to save face, had pushed the event forward, hoping the PR campaign would repair the damage. Alara knew it was the perfect moment to take him down, publicly, permanently, and on his own stage. The day of the summit, the ballroom was packed with journalists, shareholders, tech enthusiasts, all watching as Nathan walked on stage. His smile was calculated, his tone smooth. He was trying to spin the narrative, pretending the worst was behind him. That's when Alara walked in. Wearing a sleek black dress and heels that clicked across the marble floor like a warning, she stepped onto the stage. The crowd turned, confused murmurs rising. Nathan froze. "Excuse me," she said into the mic. "I have something to say." The spotlight turned toward her, and the entire ballroom went still. Nathan's forced smile wavered as Alara's voice echoed through the grand hall. The tech summit, once orchestrated as his triumphant return to the spotlight, had just been hijacked, and everyone was watching. "You've all seen the headlines," Alara began, her voice calm but ice-cold. "But what you don't know is the depth of the deception that's been kept from you until now." Gasps rippled through the crowd as she opened the folder in her hand and raised a printed page. "This is a clause from my prenuptial agreement, signed, notarized, and protected under contract law. If betrayal through criminal intent can be proven, then every asset held by Nathan Wexler, this company, his real estate, his intellectual property, reverts to me. And as of this morning, a judge has signed off on the proof." Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. Whispers exploded into stunned chatter. Nathan stepped forward, trying to grab the mic. "This is absurd," he barked, his voice cracking. "She's twisting the facts." "I have recordings," Ilera cut in. "Bank transfers.
Surveillance footage.
A complete forensic audit. Your empire was built on stolen technology, my family's legacy, and lies. The hospital bribes?
Documented.
Your affair with Camille? Timeline confirmed. And the attempt to manipulate my inheritance? Traced directly to her." Nathan's face flushed with fury as board members began murmuring to one another, some rising from their seats. He turned to the podium, desperate to regain control. "Let's not do this here." "Oh, no," Ilera snapped. "This is exactly where we're doing this. In front of every investor, journalist, and partner you've deceived." She tossed a stack of documents onto the podium. "These are signed statements from whistleblowers, former employees, contractors you stiffed, developers whose work you took credit for. You built your career on the backs of people you lied to. And I was one of them." The audience was in chaos now. Some began walking out. Others stood frozen, watching the drama unfold like a courtroom thriller. The live-streamed chat exploded online. "Nathan's done," some users typed. "This is wild." Ilera turned to face the cameras directly. "I'm filing charges for corporate theft, medical conspiracy, and attempted custody fraud. And as of this moment, I've submitted this information to federal authorities." A man in a dark suit stepped forward from the side of the stage. "Ilera Reigns?" he asked quietly. She nodded. He turned to Nathan. "Mr. Wexler, you're going to need to come with us." Nathan's eyes widened. "This is a setup. You don't have the authority." The agent flashed his badge. "Actually, we do. And you might want to call your lawyer." Two more agents emerged, flanking Nathan. The room erupted as Nathan was escorted off the stage in front of the cameras, his face drained of color. It was the kind of downfall that happened in a generation, and Ilera had orchestrated every piece of it. Backstage, she collapsed into a chair, her body trembling from the adrenaline. Her phone buzzed with messages. News outlets.
Family.
Strangers. Her inbox flooded with support. But it wasn't over yet. That night, as the footage from the summit went viral, Camille reappeared, this time with a weak attempt at public sympathy. She posted a shaky apology video, tears streaming down her face, blaming Nathan for manipulating her. "I was in a dark place," she sobbed. "I never meant to hurt Ilera. I was used." But Ilera had anticipated the PR stunt. The next morning, she leaked phone recordings, conversations between Camille and Nathan, planning the baby shower sabotage, and mocking Ilera's pregnancy. The internet exploded again. Sympathy turned to scorn. Brands that once courted Camille pulled their partnerships. Her modeling deals vanished. Invitations were revoked. In less than 48 hours, she went from influencer to outcast. But even as Camille fell, Ilera stayed focused. She had one goal left: securing full legal custody of her daughter and rebuilding her name. The custody battle was brutal. Nathan's legal team pulled every dirty trick: accusations of instability, questions about Ilera's mental health, edited footage to paint her as unfit. But Ilera's lawyers were ready. They had the baby's medical records, witness statements, and even a recording of Nathan admitting, in a drunken voicemail, that he never wanted to be a father anyway. When the judge finally ruled in Ilera's favor, the courtroom erupted. She was granted full custody, no visitation rights for Nathan, no shared holidays, nothing. He was deemed emotionally and physically negligent. The weight lifted off her shoulders was indescribable. Ilera held her daughter that night like it was the first time all over again. "You're safe," she whispered, kissing her tiny forehead. "And no one's ever going to hurt you again." With the legal battles behind her, Ilera turned to something she had once been afraid of: the truth. She sat down to write, not a statement, not an article, a book. It started as therapy, but it became so much more: a memoir, a story not just of betrayal, but of survival, of a woman who lost everything: her reputation, her wealth, her health, and clawed her way back with nothing but grit, truth, and the will to protect her child. The manuscript quickly caught the attention of publishers. Within weeks, bidding wars began. Frosted, the memoir's working title, hit shelves 6 months later. It debuted at #1. Bookstores sold out. Talk shows called. Readers across the country, especially women, rallied behind her story. What was once a viral humiliation had become a symbol of resilience. And in the middle of it all was Julian. He had been there through it all. Quiet, constant, never asking for anything in return. They'd grown up together, shared childhood summers, and lost touch in their 20s. But he reappeared just when she needed him most. Julian never pushed, never made demands. He simply showed up when she couldn't sleep, when the headlines became too much, when the baby wouldn't stop crying. And slowly, Alara realized that not every man wanted something from her. Some just wanted to stand beside her. The soft hum of violins filled the gala hall as Alara stood near the grand staircase, the same one where, over a year ago, she had been publicly humiliated in front of the entire city. But tonight, the atmosphere was different. There were no stares of pity, no whispers behind champagne glasses. Just admiration, respect, and a sea of flashing cameras eager to capture her comeback. Her satin emerald gown shimmered beneath the chandelier light as she held her daughter, now almost a year old, against her hip. The little girl cooed softly, her tiny fingers grasping the edge of Alara's necklace. In her daughter's eyes, she saw a reflection of everything she'd endured and everything she had overcome. This was more than a gala. It was a full-circle moment. The very people who once laughed at her were now lining up to shake her hand, to apologize, to ask her for interviews and features. But Alara didn't need their validation anymore. She had found something stronger, herself. "Did you ever think you'd be back here?" Julian asked as he stepped beside her, dressed in a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd walked out of a magazine. He handed her a glass of sparkling cider, avoiding alcohol out of respect for her. "I didn't think I'd survive it," Alara admitted. "But here I am." Julian smiled, brushing a curl away from her cheek. "Here you are." The evening passed like a dream. She gave a short speech, just long enough to thank the people who stood by her, and to remind everyone listening that resilience isn't born from power, but from pain. The audience applauded, not out of politeness, but from genuine admiration. She had turned tragedy into triumph. And she wasn't done yet. Just 2 weeks later, Nathan's trial began. The charges were extensive: corporate fraud, theft, endangerment, falsifying medical records. Federal investigators presented everything Alara had unearthed. The courtroom was packed with reporters, each detail of the case playing out like a headline waiting to happen. Nathan, once untouchable, looked like a shadow of his former self. No more tailored suits or confident smirks. Just a man unraveling, caught in the very web he thought he controlled. Camille never showed up. After her failed sympathy video and mounting civil suits, she disappeared completely. Rumors swirled about a quiet relocation overseas, maybe somewhere in the Mediterranean. But wherever she was, no one cared. The world had moved on without her. When the guilty verdict was read, Alara didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She simply exhaled, slowly, fully, as if releasing years of pain in one breath. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, satisfying, and absolute. Nathan was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 10. His assets were frozen, his company dismantled, and his name became a cautionary tale in business ethics lectures across the country. Still, Alara didn't stop there. She launched a foundation for women who had suffered similar betrayals: financial manipulation, psychological abuse, legal intimidation. The YAR initiative provided legal counsel, emergency grants, and resources for women with nowhere else to turn. What began as a passion project quickly became a national movement. Politicians, celebrities, and survivors came forward to support the cause. For the first time in her life, Alara wasn't just a headline or a story. She was a leader, a mother, a survivor, and she had rebuilt everything. Her new tech venture, powered by innovations from her father's original patents, was already being hailed as one of the most ethical and disruptive startups of the decade. Investors lined up not just for profit, but because they believed in her. Her name, once dragged through the mud, now stood for justice, resilience, and clarity. Even her relationship with her father, once fractured by lies and manipulation, had begun to heal. They didn't pretend everything was perfect, but they talked. They met for coffee. He spent time with his granddaughter. And for now, that was enough. On the one-year anniversary of her book's release, Elara stood at a signing event in downtown Manhattan. The line wrapped around the building, filled with readers, fans, and women who saw themselves in her story. She signed every copy, smiled for every photo, and listened to every tearful thank you. But it wasn't until the last hour of the evening that she saw him, Julian, standing quietly near the exit, hands in his pockets, waiting like always. "Hey," she said, walking up to him. "You stuck around." "I always do," he replied softly. They didn't say much else. They didn't need to. A few weeks later, Elara took her daughter to a quiet beach town on the coast. A break. No cameras. No meetings. Just ocean waves, sandcastles, and morning walks with Julian. It was the first time she had felt still, like she didn't have to fight anymore. One evening, while her daughter slept inside, she and Julian sat on the porch, the sky painted in pinks and oranges. He turned to her, nervous but steady. "I've loved you for a long time," he said. "Before everything. Through everything. I don't need an answer now, but I had to tell you." Elara didn't speak. She just reached out and took his hand. She didn't know what tomorrow held, but for the first time in a long time, she believed it might be beautiful. The storm was over. The healing had begun. And Elara Rains, once the girl mocked with cake on her face, had become the woman no one would ever laugh at again. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and let us know your favorite moment in the comments.